Well, hello, I'm Lynn Fishman, and I'm coming to you from the 41st Annual Science and Spirituality Conference here in Montreal, Canada. This conference is sponsored by the International Institute of Integral Human Sciences. Now, you may recognize my guest. He is a global leader in the field of quantum science, a quantum activist, speaker, and a prolific author. He has a latest book which is called Quantum Economics, Unleashing the Power of an Economics of Consciousness. And we're going to speak about this in a few moments. So let me introduce quantum physicist Dr. Amit Goswami. Can you tell our audience what is quantum science and how has it changed the paradigm of the world?
Quantum physics roughly can be stated in this way, that contrary to the Newtonian belief that most people, even most scientists have today, that objects are things moving in space and time. Quantum physics says that objects are waves of possibility moving in a domain of reality that can only be called domain of potentiality, which is instantly interconnected through a ability of signal-less communication. So there's no signals to communicate, which means everything is always interconnected instantly through this domain of reality. And on close examination, we find that the domain is consciousness itself, our consciousness. And so that is the difference. Objects are not things in space and time. They are objects of potentiality, which becomes things in space and time when consciousness chooses from potentiality the actuality of a particular moment-to-moment experience.
Okay, very clear. Well, this really applies to the next question. The person wanted to know more about signal-less communication. What does it mean, and what does it prove, and how can you share a study that showed how consciousness can be signal-less or non-local?
Wonderful questions. So, first of all, why is the question of signals so important? In space and time, we communicate only with signals. This we know because there is just no other means of communication between people. Of course, people talk about extrasensory communication. That's different. That's actually quantum way already. And scientists still are very leery about accepting such communication as legit, especially scientists who believe that there is only communication through material means. And material means of communication means communication with signals.
Right.
So what does that mean? That means that we have a theory, very powerful theory, very verified theory, completely taken as scientific truth, namely theory of relativity, which says that the signals have a speed limit, the speed of light. Signals can only travel maximally at the speed of light, which is great speed, but still it's a limited speed. So there is a speed limit. So instant communication is possible only if the communication is without signals. This is the import, and we find this domain of potentiality, instant communication is possible, and this idea has been experimentally verified by the famous Alan Aspect and his collaborators in Paris. And that experiment revolutionized our worldview because that verified what quantum theory has been saying for a long time. It verified the idea that yes, there is a domain of reality that is outside of space and time and distinguishable experimentally from space and time. Certain times signals are necessary. In that domain of potentiality, no signals are necessary, which means that the domain is instantly interconnected. What does that mean? If you look deeper, instant interconnection means only one thing, that there is no distinction, there is no separateness in that domain. Everything is the same thing. Interconnected instantly means it's the same thing. You don't need signals to communicate with yourself. And that's the only example of signal-less communication that we know of. So you have to conclude that there is oneness. There is a domain of reality where oneness reigns. That is the reigning substance, oneness. Now, this oneness is interesting because that's how mystics talk about consciousness. Mystics say, beyond our separate consciousness that we experience in space and time, there is a oneness of consciousness. We are all interconnected beings. We are all the same being. And therefore, they tell us to love each other, to be kind to each other, and all these mystical things that we don't do anymore or we have forgotten to do. They all come from the idea because, look, we are hurting yourself. By hurting another person, you are hurting yourself because you are one with the person in reality, in truth.
Okay, can you explain the experiment which verified that two brains communicated with each other non-locally?
Yes, this is a very important question. The reason is that when we say this domain of potentiality is consciousness, naturally people will be curious because consciousness as we experience it is expressed through our brain. So if consciousness is something that is the domain of reality, then we ask ourselves, how is that represented in our reality, in space and time, that we are familiar with, that we experience? So the answer, of course, has to be that the consciousness is represented in some way in the brain. And then the question comes, okay, so if consciousness has this characteristic of oneness, signal-less communication, which is called non-local in quantum physics, then the brain must also able to use this non-local consciousness to communicate with each other. Namely, two brains should be able to do signal-less communication. Now, this conclusion from my work, which was published in 1989, I did not consider that this can ever be verified by an actual physical experiment. Of course, I knew about mental telepathy that people do. But strictly speaking, mental telepathy is between minds, not between brains. I mean, brain is the physical thing, remember? It's associated with the mind. But to prove that two brains communicate non-locally, I thought would be beyond our ability. But this experimental neurophysiologist, Jacobo Greenberg, Mexican professor at the University of Mexico, he contacted me on the telephone and said that he has read my paper and he has figured out a way of demonstrating that two brains can communicate without signals. So he invited me to the University of Mexico. I went there and we participated in that experiment. The experiment consisted of two people. Sometimes they caught them from the street, sometimes they were people that they knew, but the result was always the same. They bring them, the people meditate together for about 20 minutes, then they continue meditating, but they are separate, sitting in two what is called Faraday chambers, electromagnetically impervious rooms. Completely enclosed, so that no electromagnetic communication is possible. Then their brains are connected to EEG machines, which measure electrical activity in the brain, called brain waves. And one subject only is shown a series of light flashes, which produce electrical activity in that brain. But the other subject sees nothing, so no electrical activity should, in principle, be possible for that brain, the other brain. Lo and behold, indeed, people can extract an electrical potential from the observed brain waves in this EEG machine, the observer who has seen the light flashes. But at the same time, when the electrical activity is measured by the EEG of the other person is examined, we find that there is an identical, practically identical, huge overlap, 70 to 80% overlap.
It's incredible.
Between the two potentials. So somehow the electromagnetic waves of one brain, electrical activity of one brain, has passed into the other brain without any electrical connection.
What do you think the meditation did? As you said, they began by the
It's
meditation.
very significant. So the meditation protocol is very interesting.
Okay.
The two subjects meditated with the intention that they will have signal-less direct communication. So the intention was crucial, and Jacobo, to his credit, figured it out somehow. That meditative intention is the crucial thing that makes reality, this reality, that one connected reality, accessible to us. If we just could remember it, our
Right.
spiritual systems are designed for that. They are designed so that people can focus on meditative awareness before they pray, and they always pray for that oneness. Right?
Right, right,
What do we
right.
pray for? We pray for something from the divine,
Yes,
which
connection.
is the oneness.
Yes,
right?
connection.
Connectedness. And that connectedness we get by intending.
Exactly.
So intention is part of the prayer, although we forget. We start putting our desires rather than intentions, which are a little bit different. But if we can bring the power of intention into the forum, into our experience, into our life regularly, and we do that through use of the creative process. We follow it up with the creative process. Then we can manifest. We really do have a science of manifestation today.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about quantum consciousness. How would you define it?
Okay, so I call quantum consciousness this non-local consciousness. So when we are using the part of ourselves which chooses, because choice exists in this non-local domain of potentiality.
That's important.
That's important. This is where things are possibility. This is where things have different facets, and we can choose one facet vis-a-vis another to serve our situation, to find solutions to our problems. And if we knew how to access this choice, then we can also choose the unknown. We can also choose new solutions. Whereas if we access only those choices that we have made before, which is already registered and learned, involving the brain in some ways, then we are stuck with the old.
Right. We don't get anywhere.
We don't get anywhere new. I mean, we get somewhere, of course. We are always doing this, doing that. But we are struggling with changing our behavior this way, that way, manifesting our new intentions and trying to be innovative but stuck with the old. If we want the new in our life, what do we have to do? We have to learn to access quantum consciousness, this non-local ground of being. There's no escape from the fact that in this world of manifestation, in this world of space-time, there's always separateness. The very fact that we are aware in this world is because it has separated consciousness into a subject and an object. Okay?
Yes.
So this is very fundamental to understanding of quantum physics. So the personal consciousness that results from this, of course, is due to the memory that accumulates from the past stimuli and our answers to those stimuli. So stimuli response reinforcement mechanism that psychologists talk about is what produces the conditioned ego, a pattern of behavior.
Right.
And then on that pattern of behavior, we further impose personalities. We behave in a special way in special environment, like one behavior for parents, one behavior for teachers, one behavior for lovers, one behavior for friends. In that way, we have multiple masks that we wear in different situations. So psychologists call it acquiring masks of personality. If we knew that by being authentic, we can live with the quantum self much better, that experience, if people knew what that experience is like, it's called the flow experience. People talk about it today, thanks to sports mainly, because, Michael Jordan used to talk about how he is on the flow, or Tiger Woods talks about how he is in the zone when he plays golf. So we know about these words.
And that's the authentic self coming through.
That's the authentic self coming through them, because in those moments they lose the personalities. They really are just the player, just that expertise that they have. And that expertise together with the inspiration they get from the quantum self, the real self, that together gives them the flow, and therefore they say, whoa, I'm not like that in my ordinary life. I was in a zone.
Right.
But suppose I tell you that if we learn to live this quantum way, as many hours as you can, gradually it improves, then what then? Wouldn't you like to do it? Because you can live in the zone, suppose you can live in the zone 8-9 hours a day.
Sounds like
even
nirvana.
Tiger Woods gets to do it only, he's retired now, but even when he was very active, still only a few hours at a time in a whole day, right?
Right.
And creative people, spiritual people, they live in the zone, live in the flow.
So how can we promote that flow
Well,
from a quantum perspective?
Just making the knowledge accessible. What in the past there was a very bad habit. We used to keep secrets, and this is why a movie called The Secret became very popular, because it promised to expose this secret. And
Right.
the secret to them was very simplified, oversimplified, if you ask me. But the concept of secret really has been a very popular concept with humanity throughout the ages. We thought this secret should be guarded. If not guarded, they will be misused. And these are all false impressions. There is no misuse of this secret, cannot be misused. This secret, which
'Cause
is
it's who we are.
creativity,
It's
which
who
is
we-
authentic,
Right.
which we are, so that cannot be misused, obviously.
Right.
So this concept of secrets, if people knew it, will be misused. That was why the people kept the secrets. But actually, the secret was because people wanted to be elitist. There was an elitist mentality in the olden days.
Okay.
And finally, with
know
hundreds of years of democracy, we have a little bit of it, and we know that that's where we want to go. So we're giving up the secrets. We're sharing. Thanks to quantum physics, we also have the knowledge now better than ever. So there's no need for the secret, and we are saying everybody can access quantum consciousness, everybody can be creative, and let's do it. Let's see what happens if everybody becomes creative. And now, secret is all the more prevalent because the prevalent worldview does not believe in creativity. So that has caused another reason for suppression of the knowledge that we have had for creativity. Creativity is sure proof that we are not machines, because the creativity researchers find that not only we have to work for creativity, for some mysterious reason, creative people also always follow up work with relaxation. I know this from my own life, but any creative person you investigate. By the way, spiritual people do the same thing, which suggests that they too are using creativity to do their personal growth.
We're talking about relaxation here.
We are talking about relaxation here. So, conventionally, people think that creativity is work.
Right.
Indeed, ultimately, the product is a product. So we think all products must be because we did some work. We think that we goof up means nothing. No, that's not true. Goofing off is very important for creativity. Why? Because when we consciously work, we can only process so much. But the possibilities are infinite. How much can we process? So even if we follow up the processing with experimental data, like science does, even then we can only follow up a limited amount of thought. Often, the processing that is required is such vast amount that we could not possibly do it with the conscious mind. So the creativity researchers found the verification that no, the mind becomes unconscious when you relax, and it is that unconsciousness that increases our processing of potentiality to a degree that we cannot even imagine. And the more clean you are, clean I mean your unconscious, more clean the unconscious is. Clean meaning that unconscious is not bothered by your past experiences as much, your neurotic tendencies as much.
Worries about the future.
Worries about the future as much. So if you have such a clean unconscious, then chances are that by using this creative process, which consists of preparation, of course, because you are feeding some knowledge.
Yes, go over the 4 phases.
Well, the first phase is preparation. So we prepare. We prepare what we know from other people's thinking, reading books, from my own thinking, from my experiments, little bit of experiments that we can do. So this is preparation.
Okay.
Preparation feeds some knowledge to the unconscious. But the unconscious builds on it. This is why the objects of the unconscious are called waves. What is the characteristic of waves that surprises us? You throw a pebble in the pond, water wave immediately will grow in bigger and bigger circles, right?
Right.
Crest lines. So that's the characteristic of waves. The wave of possibility grows in possibility. So the pool of possibility from which consciousness chooses becomes bigger and bigger and bigger the more you wait. But if you wait too long, think about it, you lose the focusing. So your mind, being human, will not focus on the problem anymore. It will go back to your usual regular patterns of habits, which means this conditioned thinking will come back.
Okay.
So
what
periodically
then?
you have to stoke the fire, so to speak. So periodically you have to do preparation again and unconscious processing again, relaxation again. I call it do, be, do, be, do.
Right.
Intermittent doing and being.
Focus doing.
Focus doing and relax being.
Okay.
Focus doing, relax being. Very good. So that combination, do, be, do, be, do. Focus, do, relax, be. Continue, alternatively. So that produces the third stage, which is called a quantum leap, a sudden jump in thought that produces the new thought that is necessary to solve the problem.
Like an insight.
Like an insight.
Okay.
Exactly. That's what is called an insight.
Okay.
And then in the fourth stage, we manifest the insight, called manifestation. We manifest the insight in our living. We manifest the insight in an external product. We manifest the insight in those two ways. If we use it for external product, we call it outer creativity. If we use it for changing our pattern of life, we call it inner creativity.
And I would imagine a key there is to take action.
Absolutely.
If
Otherwise,
stuck.
we say the process is complete only if you manifest.
Right.
So product is important. Either the product is a new you or the product is an outer product that everybody can see.
Right. Or you will fall back into old patterns if, for example,
Yeah,
you're working on
or you
yourself.
fall back into your thinking. What good
Yes.
is it? I mean, you have a million insights, but nobody gets to look at it.
That's the key. You got to take action.
Yeah, you got to take action.
Inspired action.
You got to manifest.
What practices can we employ to put ourselves in touch with quantum consciousness, like prayer or
Yeah,
like
those
that?
are good. All prayer is good, meditation is good because it slows down our mind. The more time we give to unconscious processing, the better is our creativity.
Okay.
Intention, of course, is very good. So generally speaking, I say that just like we have made our 3R as a mantra. Writing, reading, arithmetic. Similarly, we should make 3 or 4 I's as our mantra.
Oh, okay. What's that?
Well, we have already gone through some of it. Intention is one, right?
Right.
Intention is a very important one. We already know that. Imagination is important because it takes us from the known, makes a step towards the unknown. Insight is very important, right?
Okay.
And inspiration is very important. That's another one. That's where teacher plays a role, or the exemplifier, the guru, to inspire us into, when we see somebody who has already done it, who is in peace, who is in beauty, who is in love, then we know that it can be done, and then we can do it. Like seeing a Mother Teresa, or even hearing about a Mother Teresa, about a Gandhi, about a Nelson Mandela, about a Martin Luther King, helps us to be nonviolent, right? Because we know that somebody did it.
Right, and we're capable of the same. Where do you think we are in the evolution of our consciousness as a species, and what do you see ahead for the human race as quantum science is understood more fully and widely?
I think what will happen, of course, is that people will be more in tune with their non-local consciousness, quantum consciousness, because we are communal beings. We'll learn to live the fact that we are both individual and communal at the same time. So we can be selfish, and we can also look in favor of doing others some good.
And when you look around the world today, what do you see that we've progressed?
I think we are progressing, in spite of the fact that there are some very selfish people who are teaching other people to commit suicide while they kill completely unknown strangers. We see that, and then on the face of that, it's easy to get carried away and see that the world is full of violence and it's going to the dogs, but this is not true. Mm-hmm. You look closely and you find that no, people are also very cooperative, very much opening up to love. Maybe just a segment, because there is the tendency towards becoming very separate as well, and people are also very lonely. But I think it is a mistake to see one or the other too much. The fact is that, yes, we have tremendous problems in the world, but it is also a fact that a significant portion, maybe as high as 20% of humanity, is very much waking up to this new awareness of more love, more fairness, more beauty, more truth, more abundance in their life.
Can you talk a few minutes about the concept of a quantum economy and the economics of consciousness, and how can consciousness play a role in changing the current way business is carried out?
Well, of course, currently we just, everybody has suffered through the Great Recession, and we know that the economics, the way that we do it today, has to change. And I suggest that we use this awareness to examine the whole situation with human societies that we have built under scientific materialism. Wrong thinking leads to wrong way of living.
Right.
It's obvious. So we have done some wrong thinking, and we have been living the wrong way, and which is that we live like machines. And when we live like machines, what happens, of course, is that we get some machine-like characteristic. We don't see meaning in the world anymore. We don't see values in the archetypes anymore. We don't see values of love and truth and all this. We relativize everything. Love is relative, truth is relative. So these things are the things that are wrong with today's world.
So we're valuing the wrong things, is what
you
you're
are
saying.
Valuing the wrong things because you don't know what the right things anymore.
Mm-hmm,
You know, you ask me some questions about discriminating good from the bad, but you have lost the power of discrimination because you have already assumed that our nature is this negative emotional brain circuit. The maximum we can do is to seek pleasure instead of pain. And that's called positive psychology when you do that. And that's good. I'm not negating it. But that only can take us to a limited extent, because ultimately you cannot not have the pain circuits. They will come back. Pleasure is always followed by pain. So how to go beyond pleasure and pain and get happiness and satisfaction and joy in life, this is the real question of humanity. But first you have to be a human. So the question then comes, how do you become human? And right now, I talked about 20%, or maybe realistically it's only about 10%. That's not enough. How about the rest of the humanity? So how do you make rest of the humanity into human beings? We have to go beyond this machine mentality, which dominates our economics. In economics, what do you find? It's only material stuff.
Right.
Material stuff can only feed machines satisfactorily. But human beings need more. They need meaning, they need satisfaction, they need these archetypes, they need to satisfy their soul. Otherwise, they suffer.
Right.
So much depression today.
Yes.
I already told you, absence of love produces cancer. So many cancers, so many heart attacks, right?
Yes.
So depression, heart attack, cancer. I have covered the 3 major diseases of today.
Yes.
Why are they happening? They are happening because we are not paying attention to things that we should value. Love, truth, this kind of thing. So what we need to do is to bring back these archetypes in our life to help people live their life, because they have lost their touch with these archetypes. So how do we do that? My suggestion is that we finally are ready to bring some of these subtle things that we experience, feeling, thinking, and intuition, as economic commodities.
Take care. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
And I want to say thank you to you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this wonderful interview. We're going to see you soon. Bye for now.